And this is going to be a different live stream because I am filming like this, I guess. My phone sometimes is very special indeed. But I just want to go ahead, guys, and introduce myself in this video by first of all stating that this will be a very important live stream that you will not want to miss, because we are going to go into some really deep stuff about what occurred in the Middle East and what still occurs to this day, unfortunately, as a result of Islam. And to go ahead and start off this video, I just want to go ahead and ask you guys and thank you guys so much for all of your support. Whether you like my streams, so you subscribe, whether you share with others, because that's all free 99 to go ahead and do. Or you go ahead and financially support me either through PayPal or becoming a member, because all financial support helps me to continue doing this full time for you guys to get the truth out there. Because if I have to rely on YouTube AdSense, guys, we are just not walking unactive ducks. That is the reality of the matter, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it and support me financially. I'll link below. I appreciate all your support. Become a member, and if you can't, always go ahead and like. Right now I see 20 people in the live stream, so you guys go ahead and smash that like button and share it with others, because that's all free 99 to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking questions, and let's just get into it. So she didn't really want to, she doesn't want to be on camera right now because she's driving right now, but I'm going to go ahead and ask her just a few different questions about her experience with Islam, and just kind of what it's like living in the Middle East actively with Muslims, and yeah, and how is the transformation. So I guess we could start off with your childhood. Why did you grow up in Saudi? Why did you grow up with Muslims? How was it like? Was it good? Was it bad? Did you think it was normal? Was it weird for you? How was it? Explain it.
So growing up in Saudi Arabia, my family is actually Filipino. So they came there because they had work opportunities, which a lot of Filipinos do, and to this day they work there. But back then it wasn't as liberal as it is right now. So they're really strict, with clothing, with dealing with the opposite gender. And yeah, growing up I thought that was just normal, oh, you can't be around men whenever you're in a public setting. When you're walking, you're not supposed to, let's say you're just dating someone, you can't be holding hands in public, you can't be kissing, all that stuff. As a woman, you can't be dressed immodestly, which to them is if you don't have, let's say, your abaya, or your tarha is what we had. But I think nowadays they're more lenient on that. They don't require that necessarily. And yeah, I remember being a little girl, and then at the age of I would say, I don't know, 10 or 9, they're oh, you have to start wearing your abaya. And I was at that age, I was okay, that's weird. I have to start dressing up how my mom dresses up. And it was okay, it was a mixed feeling, because it's oh wow, I'm gonna be like my mom, we're dressing up the same, we have to wear the abaya. But then at the same time, looking back at it, it's oh wow, I guess I was seen as a woman at 10, and it had to be covered up at such a young age. So it just goes to show how it's so perverted,
That's very interesting. So I guess to kind of learn a little more about you. So did you think that this was normal at all, to be able to dress up in the whole abaya? So just to clarify for those of you guys that don't know, could you clarify what that is specifically? And then could you also go into detail, your experience? Did you think this was normal? Was this weird? Did you know what the rest of the world was? Did you think the rest of the world dressed up like this? Or what is your opinion on this whole concept of you just wearing this thing around you from the age of 10 onward?
Obviously I wasn't, yeah, I grew up there, but I wasn't ignorant, I guess, because I had the internet and all that stuff. So I knew that that's not how the rest of the world lived. So, and also my parents would take me to the Philippines too, so I had that contrast in my head, like, okay, it's different when I'm in the Philippines, and then it's different in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, there's a lot of differences that I knew it was different for sure. But you know, as a kid, you just kind of like accept it, and you just like, okay, this is just how life is. So yeah.
Okay. And so did you like feel a difference in terms of like your freedoms, your liberties, your lifestyles when you were in Saudi Arabia? Guys, I'm like all tripping up. You're making me so nervous. And I'm just like, guys. So did you feel like, I guess like when you were in Saudi Arabia, did you feel a sense of, I guess like freedom when you left, or did it feel the same? Like, I guess just a deeper understanding for those of us that don't have to live in an environment like that or that are non-Muslim. How is that like leaving or going back into an environment like that after going to the States or the Philippines or some other country that has some sort of freedoms?
Yeah, well, I would say it's not like a whole, like, it's not like everything is negative, like it's like the worst thing in the world, because it is like, I did grow up there, and there's a lot of different things that I consider is good. Like, for example, you know, like the food is good. You know, my experiences growing up were good because I was surrounded by like my Philippine community. And I grew up Christian, so we had a church that was actually like hidden. So that was a pretty good aspect. But I would say like it's a mixed bag, because when I came here to the US, I like truly experienced what freedom was like. Like, it's like I would not go back to like where I was at and live that way, because it's a lot of fear, especially as like a woman. And I think if you have a family, that's really great, but a lot of people go there, a lot of like women especially, they want to be domestic helpers, nurses, like all types of careers they try to pursue, because they, you know, there's openings there, but then they end up, you know, getting the worst, I guess, experience, because, you know, they don't have like men in their family to protect them, or they don't have like a good, you know, truthful, genuine company or family who takes them in. So it's a mixed bag. So
I want to say God bless you guys, everyone, for joining in. Don't forget to like or share. That's free 99. And if you feel led by the Spirit of God, please go ahead and support financially if you can. That helps us to continue doing this. So I guess just to get right back into it, I mean, you said a load of interesting key points from all of that. But one thing that it seems like people are interested in is like, how did they treat Christians, or how did they treat women? How was your experience? Because you grew up in Saudi Arabia, you know what it's like firsthand. It's not like, you know, you just visited there on a hiatus for 6 months. You actually lived there. You grew up there. You know what it's like to live in the Middle East and a dominated male sphere with mainly Muslims. So how did they treat Christians, or how did they treat women differently?
So,
and by the way, sorry, I know you're also Filipino. So did they treat you differently also because of your ethnicity? Like, could you go into all of those details about the hierarchy there, maybe?
Yeah. So, growing up Christian, I would hear a lot of stories. Like, I think over the years, it just progressively became more, I wouldn't say accepting, because they're not accepting. It's more like permissible, as long as you're not doing it in front of their face. But back in the day, I think before I was born, or I don't know, I lived there for 14 years. So before that time, or maybe when I was a kid, there was someone in our church who actually got arrested because he was wearing like a nice shirt. Like he was dressed up for church, and then he had a Bible at hand.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did I hear you correctly? Did you just say a guy got arrested in church for dressing up?
No, he was dressed up for church. So he wasn't in church yet, but he was dressed up for church, and he had a Bible in hand. And oh yeah, that's another thing, is when we go to the Philippines, we have my parents would bring home Bibles, and then they would cover up the Bible.
Allegedly. Because that's illegal, by the way, in Saudi Arabia, I believe, right?
Yeah, and then they would put like they would take a piece of like computer paper, and then they would individually wrap the binding of the Bible so that when they open up the bag to inspect it further, they won't see like words saying like Holy Bible. So they would like cover it up with paper so that when it goes through like the scanning system, they just see like books, and they'll be like, oh, okay, nice. But yeah, I don't know if they actually ever like opened the bags or whatever, or someone got caught. Um, but yeah, it's you have to be very secretive. And the church that we went to, it wasn't necessarily underground, but we had to make sure that it was in a place that was like obscure and hidden. And yeah, and then I remember whenever we would like get a new location, it was important to like really soundproof it, because we were kind of like a little bit like charismatic too, so there would be a lot of like music and drums and all that stuff. So yeah, so like whenever we would move churches, we would have to make sure that everything's padded up. And yeah, and then there would be someone living there on like the upstairs, or maybe I would say like 3 families living in the church, just so that it can pass off as like, oh, this is where people live at, not necessarily like a church. So
Wow. And so I guess, like, how did you receive treatment from other people that, were in Saudi Arabia? Did they treat you a certain type of way because you were a Christian or you were a woman? Did you have any bad experiences or anything like that?
me personally, I wasn't really treated bad necessarily, because like I said, like I grew up in a Filipino community. So like the most I've ever been exposed is just like outside, like dealing with like people in the store. I never really had like a close friend or Arab friend or anything like that. But I hear stories from my parents too, that they, at work, they would talk about these things. Like my dad would get like Quran books from like his Arab co-workers and stuff, because they would be talking about like, oh, like Jesus wasn't God and stuff like that. And my dad's like, he's a pastor, so he would talk to them about it, but obviously he has to be very careful. But yeah, he like during like when I was growing up, it was okay, I guess, to say that you're a Christian or that you have a different belief system. But it's definitely not okay to like go ahead and share the gospel and be like, oh, you should come to my church, or like be a Christian too, or something like that. And you have to be careful, because especially like as a Filipino, you're basically a second class citizen because you're not Arab. So Arabs are very much prioritized in Saudi Arabia. So you can't be like, like thinking it's your country, because how they think is like, oh, you're in my country, like you're in my land and you're in my territory. So yeah, and it's like their politics is heavily influenced by Islam. So
Yes. Yeah. I think I remember you and this is something we were talking about before I actually went live, guys. But I remember you telling me something along the lines of that there was this particular situation when you guys were walking home one day and you were with your mother, and there was like some random Muslim guys trying to catcall you guys or something like that. Could you go a little more detail into that story? Because I kind of want to, tell people like your real life experiences and what actually occurred. And
yeah, of course. And I would start by saying like, yeah, it happens everywhere, and that's a thing all around the world. But in my particular case, it's like I'm actually just like barely outside by myself, or just with my mom, or just with a bunch of women, because of that thing that you were talking about particularly. And it happened a couple of times even when I was a child, where I would just go to the store by myself, even in our own like compound, which is where we like live at, which is quote unquote more safer. And when I would go and it's just to be expected. And when that happens, either you just keep walking, or you just, you don't fight back, and you just pretend like you don't hear them. And that one time when my mom and I were walking back to our home, and it was just right down the street, there were these group of men who just like, as soon as we left the store, they pulled up with their car, and they opened the door wide open. There was like, I think the car was pretty much full except for like a little bit of space, and they were like saying, oh, come in, and they were like beeping their horn, or what's it called? What's this called?
The car horn?
Yeah, the car horn. And then they were like motioning us like this, and they were like right there, like they were really close to us too. So they could have easily just like grabbed one of us. And then, so my mom and I had to like walk away really quickly and then get to our apartment. And it's so funny because there's I wouldn't say guard, but I guess someone who owns the apartment like hires someone to like just sit there and watch. Yeah, security guard basically. And then we were like, look at what they're doing, like help us, like tell them like that's haram, or that's that's literally haram. And then he was just like standing there, and he was like yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That was a pretty shook up. And there were other times when we walk, because you can't really walk without grabbing attention. As a woman, you don't even have to look like, promiscuous or pretty, or
and that's and that's what I was going to ask you next. So how old were you when you experienced your first like terrible encounter like that? And it's not necessarily, I guess, that you're saying that it wasn't like it's bad or anything, but you just kind of get used to it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so how old were you like when you first experienced that like specific encounter? Were you wearing like an abaya, a hijab? Were you dressed immodestly as a 10-year-old girl? I mean, or 14, whatever age you were, like, can you explain a little more on the details?
No, they're like, compared to like, I don't know, not even like compared to a Western woman, like the way we were dressed, like we were dressed from neck to shins, like except so. And then it doesn't matter how hot it gets, it doesn't matter if the sun is blazing down on you, you're wearing your abaya, you're not, it's like if you're not wearing your abaya, then you're basically like committing a crime, so it's illegal.
So you were like Casper the Ghost, with a black Casper the Ghost 24/7.
Yeah, technically.
Wow, that's crazy. And how old were you when that occurred?
Around 10, yeah, around the age of 10, or I would say a little earlier. I want to say 10 to be safe.
So I guess, would you say like whenever, like for example, because I want to get a little more theological now. So I guess whenever we look at the Quran and when we look at the Hadith and the history of Islam, and they say things along the lines of, Muhammad, he was like a 6-year-old man who married Aisha at the age of 6 and consummated the marriage at 9. Do you believe that is actually possible to occur in the Middle East? Do you think that's something that's like normal there? Do you think that's something that's like a stretch or some sort of Western propaganda or Islamophobia? Like, what are your opinions about that, coming from over there as a woman who grew up with Islam in Saudi Arabia? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because that thing that happened with Aisha, the 6-year-old girl, I didn't know that until you told me about it. So, because whenever you're there, it's just like good things about Islam. You can't really bad talk it. You can't expose like the bad things. So I never really knew about.
So you guys are oblivious to a lot of the beliefs in Islam.
Yeah, I definitely was. Yeah, and like even in school, I went to a Filipino school, but even in school, they really push. They push like the, what's it called, the prayer. They say the prayer. That's why like I still memorize it. Like I still know the words and stuff. Like they try to teach us Arabic, they teach us like history, but they teach us like the good parts, like, oh, you know, we do, you know, Hajj, we do like, you know, Ramadan, like all these things. And it's like, oh, like it makes you think, oh wow, they're so like disciplined, or they're so like good people. But in reality, they hide these things. And everything like clicked when you told me about the Aisha thing, because like even before I was 10 and started wearing my abaya, I think I told you about it. When I was a kid, I was like, I think I was like 5 or 6 with my dad. We were at the store, and we, you know, just grabbed a couple of things, you know, and we went to the cashier to pay. And then the cashier was just like staring me down, and I remember I was young, but I still felt uncomfortable. I was like, why is he looking at me this way? And then he was telling me, oh, you're so beautiful. And then he talked to my dad, and he was like, is this your daughter? And he was like, you know, he was like, yeah, that's my daughter. And then he was like, oh wow, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, but your dad, he's not so much, he's ugly, or he's not. And then I don't know why my dad, he didn't really do anything. I guess, I don't know, I guess it's not really normal to do something. So it's just something odd that happened to me as a kid. I was like, I wonder why, you know, why that happened. That was just so strange.
Right, but would you say it was normal for you, like growing up with or without the habaya, for like men to act like, I guess, like creepy or weird, as people put it?
Yeah, with or without the abaya, you're getting stares. You're getting looked at by Arabs. You're not just Arabs, like Muslims, people from Bangladesh, from India, you know, because they're so deprived. They don't see women like, you know,
It's
like just walking around and just, you know, and there's a lot of like Filipinos, Indonesian women, like they come and then they work there. So whenever they see them, they're like, oh, they get like all lustful. And I remember like my abaya, there's like different kinds of abayas. Mine was like, I had 2 different ones. So one was zipper, so literally you zip it up, but there's going to be a slit in front so that you can actually walk, because if it's too tight of a abaya, then it'll be hard to walk. So there's gonna be a slit so that you can move your feet and actually walk. And I remember, I think I just like rushed out the house because I had to like go with my family, and I was like wearing shorts underneath. And then the abaya was like showing a little bit of my shins or ankles. And I just remember the stares that I had. I was like, I'm barely showing anything, like not even like my knees, just like my ankles and stuff, and a little bit of like below the knee. And it's just, you know, it's just very strange that it's like unwarranted attention. Like you don't want the attention, but yet they're so like lustful and so hungry for like something to look at, or a woman, or anything, like any woman. So they're just like, they're very creepy.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just like, I could never imagine being in such a situation, guys. I mean, like, I don't know how you personally did it, but like, I can never imagine growing up in a society where I'm a woman, I'm a little girl, and I have to worry about older men checking me out. But not only that, if I just wear my dress an inch too short, that's it. I'm a goner.
Yeah.
It's not like it's above the knees. It's not above like promiscuous parts of your body. Like, we're talking about a little 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl wearing a dress that might show a quarter of her ankle. And that's considered haram or promiscuous in Islam. That's really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like, I guess your experience coming to the West or leaving, Saudi Arabia, how would you say that was like? And why did you say that you felt a sense of freedom that you've never felt before, at least in Saudi Arabia, in a mainly Islamic country?
Yeah, I felt so free, you know, like actually being able to talk to like just random people, like when I moved here, I moved to the suburbs with my uncle and aunts, and it was like I just remember being so shocked because, you know, I would just be walking to school, and even the fact that I'm walking to school is such a like crazy idea. Like walking to school, like that's so like different.
By yourself.
Yeah,
right?
by myself. And yeah, and I remember like just seeing like, I know like Americans can sometimes be phony, or it's just like a tradition or a custom to like greet other people like, oh hi, you know, because you're walking your dog, or you just like pass by each other and you just smile. But it's just such a like freeing feeling. Like I can't believe I've been living in a totally different world where, you know, I'm not free. I can't, you know, I have to be like this hidden figure whenever I'm in public. But here, I remember when I moved here, I loved biking around because I would just be able to see places and I would just be free. I can be by myself. I could just like, you know, like wander about and like actually enjoy God's nature and creation. And I remember in Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't be able to do things like that. Like that's so unheard of. So, yeah.
I feel like it's little things like that we kind of take for granted, because I know you guys always hear everyone talking about like being a PDF file, the racism from the Muslims, and all these like other extreme things, and those things absolutely do happen. I think those things are terrible, but I think on a more like serious note, like when you look at a practical day-to-day life scenario, I feel like we take those things for granted. Like for example, if you're a woman, you can go outside and go for a jog. You can go to the grocery store while your husband's working his job, and you can go, like, you know what I mean, you can be a home taker, like, and do all the things that you need to do. But it appears as if like when you're living in a Middle Islamic majority country, women can't do things alone. Like she said herself, at the age of 10, she was getting catcalled with her mother because of the fact that she was a woman. And whenever she went outside and her ankles were just a tiny bit exposed, that it was raps. Those Muslims they didn't know what to do with that little girl. So I know it's funny, guys, but like when you think about it like that, it's like, whoa, we have so much freedom here in the Western world, and we don't acknowledge the privilege here. And another thing they also brought up to me was, I think, something about beheading in the marketplace or something. We'll get into that part next. And somebody said you'll make bank selling pics. And then somebody else said use socks for sale. Guys, I would make a fortune in the Middle East. Habibti, okay? But anyway, if you could get more into the marketplace, expound upon that more. Like, how was it? I mean, and even other things that, average, Americans or Westerners don't even begin to think about. Like, for example, going to a restaurant. How was it? Going to a mosque, going to a church. Like, how is the segregation between men and women? How is it, knowing that there's people being beheaded? Like, how is that whole, like, experience for you growing up in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, it's just like, it's because it's so embedded in Islam, like their culture. It's like, it just instills so much fear in you. Like about the beheadings, for example. So this place called Balad, my parents would go there to like send money to the Philippines or exchange money, or do like things that I guess they can't really do like where we're at. And it's such a sketchy place. Like, my mom has been touched there multiple times. My brother and I, we've been followed. Like, there were times where it would get so scary because we would just be there like with my parents and stuff, and then like the vendors who have their like items in the streets, like have their it's funny because it's kind of like the things you see in like the movies where they have their carpets laid out and then they have their items there, so that because I don't think they're allowed to do that, so when police come, they just grab the four corners of their blanket and they have all their items in there and they just like run. So one time we saw that, like we we visually saw like they had everything was normal. They had their stuff out selling their DVDs or shoes or like like all these like items, and then police came, and then they just started like everyone just like ran. They grabbed all their stuff and they put on their backs, and then they just they ran away. That was pretty wild. And yeah, it's really like it was like an unhinged place. Like it was really chaotic, so I didn't really like that place. And on top of that, and the reason why I didn't like it too is it's a very like bad atmosphere. Like you feel so heavy, like there's like bad spirits there, because like what you're talking about, there was a beheadings, and they would go ahead and they would behead people at a certain spot. I never really got to see it, and I'm not sure if it still happens, but probably does. And they're just like, there were beheadings that were actually like legally done. Like they do those as like punishment, or like for like justice, quote unquote. So that's pretty wild. So yeah, I just like going there is just so scary. It just puts a lot of fear in you.
Wow, that's actually really crazy to think about. And you saying that you feel kind of like a demonic presence or demonic spirits there, that's really wild, because even from a young age, and even from when you were there, you kind of knew that something about it was, I guess, a little off, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, guys, because I mean, when you look at it over there in the Middle East, she grew up there. To her, it was, I guess, would you say it's kind of normal, but at the same time, you felt that there was something better, or how would you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, it was normal because it was like, okay, this stuff happens, but it's like, it gives you unsettling feeling. Like, it's like, okay, this probably should not be happening. Like, this is not right, So, yeah, and yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so I guess as far as like the underground churches went, because that's also something we said we would go back to later, I believe. So when I went to the underground churches, what would happen if you guys were to go ahead and, go do it in public? And what happened with that one guy that you were talking about that you said got arrested for getting dressed up for church? Like, how is the process of like, I mean, just take it from our perspective. Me, I get to go to any church within a 5-mile circumference. It doesn't matter if I live in Miami, Florida, New York City, Los Angeles, California, in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota. I could live in the middle of nowhere in the United States of America. Guarantee you there's a church within a 5-10-mile circumference. How is that knowing? How is that lifestyle like living over there in Saudi Arabia with no public churches, right? How is that experience? And how is that like, because here we tend to fight about theology and denominations and worship styles and manner of dressing and all of those different aspects that differentiate us. How do you feel about that coming from the Middle East? How was that experience? What do you see the difference between your church life there and here? And what are the freedoms you experience? Like, could you explain all those details? Because those are all things that I kind of personally want to know. Like, what is the difference between being a Christian there, like in an active day of you there versus here? Like all those little details.
Yeah, so being a Christian over there, it's scary, but at the same time, it's very rewarding, because you know that, you have faith in God, and, you're suppressed, but you still continue, serving God, and you still, you're still holding services and you're worshiping God like every week. So it's different, because I actually grew up like with a friend, like a really good friend. I would consider her like my best friend, but she was Muslim. So it's like, you can't really like bring that friend to church. You can't really openly talk about it, but because like our church, it was mostly like Filipinos, because we can't really like reach out to Arabs, because we can't really be for certain if they're gonna report us, or they're gonna do some crazy stuff. So the focus of the church was to reach out to Filipinos who would come over there to work, who like a lot of single men would come, like they're young and they would come and work there. And then there would be a lot of people planted in different companies and stuff and be like, oh, brother, I go to a church, like, there's a lot of Filipinos. And as a result of that, like our church was very close knit, and we like every
wait, I'm sorry, I have a question. So when you guys went to go ahead and share the gospel to people, I mean, like, just think about it. I can share the gospel, no repercussion whatsoever. I mean, I might get some liberal that's like, oh, get out of my face, you hateful, racist, bigoted Christian. But I'm not necessarily going to die. I mean, that's very unlikely. I mean, it could still happen because we have free will. But it's very, very unlikely that would happen here in the States, right? So how did you guys how did you guys have that ability basically to go ahead and share the gospel with people? Like, how did you do that?
I mean, you just have to approach it very carefully, because like, especially, I mean, for like Filipinos, like other Filipinos, it'll be a lot easier because they already have like a Catholic basis to them. Some Filipinos, like especially the southern Philippines, they're Muslims, so you have to be a lot more careful. But if you're actually like approaching like another like, for example, an Arab or someone from Bangladesh, from Indonesia, you have to be like very, very careful. Like, you have to like, strike up a conversation like about your faith, or about, like, ask them like, oh, why do you believe this? And then you have to like, you have to use discernment and wisdom from God. And I remember my mom growing up, she would just say, she just tries to reflect Jesus Christ as much as she can at her workplace, and then use that, like, oh wow, she comes to work on time, she's punctual, she's very like she's not lazy. And they're like, oh wow, like, she's different. And then they'll be like, oh, why are you so happy all the time? Or like, why are you so so diligent in what you do? And then she'll be like, oh, because I have faith in God. And then that kind of like starts the conversation. But you can't be, I would say it's more of like personal, one-to-one level. You can't just like stand up and be like, oh, Jesus Christ loves
like
you.
on a street corner or something.
Yeah, you can't. There's no such thing as like freedom of speech in that manner. So you have to abide by the law, and that's just how Islam is. It's just very it's very controlling, very there's no really freedom for
So would you say that you guys are like pretty much risking your lives every time you guys would share the gospel?
I mean, yeah, for sure. And yeah.
And did you ever get scared, or like, how do you guys like overcome that fear of like just sharing the gospel, knowing that you guys can be murdered or persecuted for just believing in what you do?
I mean, it's definitely faith in God. Like, oh my goodness, like it's very tough, like, yeah, it's tough. But that's the Great Commission that Jesus Christ told us about.
My gosh, I really cannot imagine that. Like, wow. Like, just imagine, like, guys, you're walking outside your house and God leads you, like, hey, there's some dude named Michael across the street. Go share the gospel of Jesus Christ with him. And you're like, God, I can get killed right now in Saudi Arabia? Do you not care about me, fool? Like, bro, just think about that. And you're just like, you know what? You're going to have to trust in God because he told you to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. But you're taking a huge leap of faith because, oh boy, if you end up talking to the wrong person, you could get persecuted. Like, that's just like, that's not normal. That's not normal. That's so scary. And it's so crazy how you living there, you become so accustomed to that like reality. And that's like actually really sad. Because that's not a normal thing. That shouldn't be a lifestyle that anyone should have to, be accustomed to. No one should have to be accustomed to potentially being murdered for sharing their faith in Jesus Christ. And so, guys, just to recap for those of you guys just joining, she basically said that you had to develop relationships with people. probably months or years on end, right? Would you say so?
Yeah.
And in order for you to share the gospel with them. And even then, you would only share the gospel whenever the opportunity arises. Like, oh, what keeps you always happy 24/7? Because of God. And then that's how you would use it as an opportunity to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because then they're asking you. It's not like you're forcing it down their throat or you're telling them about your faith. They're asking you about your faith. So I don't know, guys. That's just such a scary... That's like living life on eggshells. That's such a scary lifestyle to live, guys. Yeah. I personally could not imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then I wanted to say something too. One time I actually had a birthday. Like, there would be this thing where it's like Filipinos have birthdays and it's a very big deal. And, you would invite other Filipinos or like people from your work. And then one time, because my mom's a Christian, whenever a program would start or like an event would start, they would start off with like a prayer or like, like something to start off. Especially like when it was my birthday, like 7th birthday, it's like a big deal. My mom started off with like a prayer, and then there was a coworker that she had that did not like that. And she was like, she talked to my mom, she was like, next time that you have an event like this, you shouldn't be praying. You should let a Muslim pray because this is Saudi Arabia. And she was a Filipino who was Muslim. And so my mom was like, she was shocked. But that didn't stop her because it's like, we're still going to pray to God, like regardless of what country we're in or what the law says, because it's, it's what God tells us to do. So, yeah, it was just another funny thing that we encountered growing up.
Okay. And so, guys, I'm sorry she's not being the most descriptive either, because there's a lot of things that like she told me that she doesn't really want to say on here. But there's also a lot of things that like for her, it's kind of like, not that it's normalized, but it was normalized to her for so long. So like little details like this, like for example, something she was telling me was when you go to like McDonald's in Saudi Arabia, as an example, let's say you go to Jollibee, some random fast food restaurant. I know you guys might not know this, and I didn't either until she told me quite literally, but they have like separate sections for both male and female. So when you go to, like, could you explain that more? Because, like, those are little details as well that, like, you don't really think about. But, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's actually a crazy thing that I didn't even think about until, like, recently, and I told him. It's the fact that, like, a lot of restaurants, a lot of fast food, either fast food or, like, just regular restaurants, when you're ordering, they have a separate area for family, quote unquote, and men. So there's gonna be a family area, which is like where the women go, where the kids go, like together with their family, or you could go to the men area, like you order through the men area. So it was really, really funny because now that I think about it, it's probably because some men are, a lot of men are perverts. Like they would even probably like perv on the kids. So that's really wild to think about.
Wow, that's really, really crazy. And I think like she was talking about as well too with me. Sorry guys, I'm bringing up all these scenarios because she doesn't like really like, I don't know, I have to like really ask her these questions. She forgets things like that. So could you also talk about the time when you were like doing the I think it was swimming, and you had like some weird perv or something like that, I don't know, come up to you or your family or something like that? Could you go like into more detail about like whenever, like, I don't know if I can say who it is exactly. So hold on, let me mute my camera because this is probably a really important person. Okay. So can I say the name or no? I'll just keep I'll keep the identity anonymous because that's not a good thing. I'd rather not talk about who it is exactly. But if you want to, you can share your story. If not, it's okay too.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, I think he was Muslim though. But so I grew up as a swimmer. My parents put me into swimming. And
again, you don't have to give specific details if you don't want to like reveal who they are, you know. Because I don't want to go into detail either, guys, but they're like a very probably powerful person, and so I don't really be dumb either, guys. So let's just, you know.
And I noticed as when you're doing your freestyle, you breathe on the side, so you see like the deck, right? And I just see this man standing, and I was like, okay, maybe he's like waiting, or like he has his kid coming up next, or like something. And like, when you're practicing, you just have to keep going. You can't, unless you have like a break. But I was swimming like, I don't know, I was just doing wall to wall, so I wouldn't stop. And then I was like, after like 15 minutes, like I still see him, like he's still standing there. And I'm like, okay, let me just like stop, because it was like, my time to rest. And then when it came up, he was like, oh, you're doing really great. Like your form is really good. You're swimming fast. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like I was just like replying. And then he was like, oh, what's your name? And then I was like, oh, Elise. I just said like my nickname. And then he was like, oh, okay, wow, that's really great. And then I swam again, but this time it was shorter. So I swam like 4 laps, I would say, and he was still there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? And then when I stopped to rest, he came closer and he was like, oh, what's your name? My name is blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, oh, wait, here, I already said that. But he said, oh, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm an engineer. I came here from...
They're always doctors and engineers, huh?
Yeah, and I was like, okay, this is weird. This is really weird. But yeah, and long story short, it was weird because he tried to talk to me, but I was like, oh, I gotta swim more laps because I'm doing my training. And it was like, okay. And then it's really weird because I came across him again another time, and he was like, oh, he tried to pass it off as like, oh, I'm your friend, we're getting to know each other and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, nice. But then it's so creepy. Like that was really creepy.
Okay, and now I have a question, and welcome everyone to the chat. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, share it with others, and if you guys can financially, please go ahead and donate, guys. I mean, we're trying to go ahead and get anything, guys, any financial support from you guys whatsoever, whether it's memberships, PayPal, whatever, all of that financially supports us so that we can continue doing this full time and sharing this content with others and sharing the truth. Also, another thing I want to mention too, guys, is I do want to kind of like, I guess I don't want to go too much into detail about your personal life because I know there's a bunch of creepy Muslims, and again, I don't want to go into detail, but she somehow like growing up kind of knew very important people. So I don't really want to expose who they really are because again, I don't think that's the most helpful thing either. But I do want you, I guess, to add some validity that you're from Saudi Arabia, I guess, because I know a lot of Muslims are going to say, oh, you're a liar, you're a lying woman and all this stuff. So could you what's something that people from Saudi Arabia, I guess, know?
Al-Baik. They might say Al-Baik, but it's like a food, it's like a fast food that I absolutely loved growing up. Me and my brother, we loved it so much.
One thing on their menu.
Garlic sauce.
What city did you grow up in?
Jeddah.
What age? Sure, I don't know. Oh, what kind of schooling system do they have over there? What does their grade system look like?
I went to a Filipino school, so it was Filipino curriculum. But the Arab name, so the name of my school was GEMS, but that is just like a thing. But it has an Arab name.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to go into any more detail, but I guess that's a little more evidence. Because I already know some Muslims are going to like try to disprove this and say, oh, fake testimony, whatever. But there was also another Muslim in the comments below that was mentioning, okay, I'll go ahead and get to your question afterward, Kevin. If you guys have any questions for her, please, by all means, go ahead and ask them in the comments below. And whenever I get a chance, I'll go ahead and ask her. But I guess like people want to know, because there was this Muslim guy. He was mentioning how you're basically lying. And, you know, if you go to, I think, the Western world or something like that, it's just as bad as it is in the Middle East. So could you like elaborate? Like, is that true? Or am I just spreading propaganda? Like, what's your experience? Because you've actually lived in both sides of the world. So you know more than me and anyone else probably in the comment section.
I mean, yeah, for sure. And they're wrong, because I remember, like, you just can't compare, because at least here, you know, like there's a lot of liberals, you know, there's a lot of creeps and stuff, yeah. But you just can't compare, because here you can actually, like, you know, with decorum, and you can civilly talk to like your cashier, and they're not gonna like make comments about your child. They're not gonna make comments about you. They're not gonna look at you up and down, like they're doing their job. If you can, you know, you can get in an Uber car with a man and you'll be fine most of the time. You can like talk to like a male teacher and then male professor or whoever. Like, you can come across men that are actually trying to be civil. They're just doing their job. They're just, you know, they're nice, they're kind, they're polite, they know the social, they have social awareness, they know how to act in front of women. But there, it's like you just show yourself like as you are, wearing your abaya, you're fully clothed, you're not seeking attention, you're very respectful, you don't, you're not necessarily begging for attention, you're not looking in their eyes, but their eyes follow you, their eyes look you up and down, they follow you around the store. I remember even the mall, like my class, we went out as a group, so we're a big class. We had our teacher with us, and it was because we were graduating, and I just remember there were like men following us, like not even just like an hour, maybe like 3 hours, because we were there, like, because we ate at in the mall, and they were just like they're just looking at us, like they're like, you can tell because they're like hungry wolves, like they
hungry wolves,
like they have an appetite, like they're like so starved and deprived. And
we're talking about Muslim men right now.
Yeah, we're talking about Muslim men, and they're very, you can tell that they don't see this on a daily basis. They actively like go to certain areas like the mall, or sometimes like it's really weird in front of like our school, like they would just stand there, or they, people who lived across, like it's really disgusting.
So you're telling me grown men would just stare at you guys like playing in the playground or something?
Oh, first of all, there was no playground, but
that's another thing. But were they just staring at you guys at school? What?
Yeah, because it's like it's a Filipino school, so it's like gated up. So but it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's like weirdly, it's like I don't know. I have to visually show you, but it's basically it's not fenced up. It's like gated up. Like,
right, but with Muslim men like literally stare at you guys at school?
Yeah. And
how did that make you feel?
I feel like you just feel like violated, like it's dirty.
You felt violated? Oh my gosh. You see, guys, and I have to ask her, like, I don't want to say intrusive questions, but I have to be very particular because, again, she grew up with it, and she doesn't share her testimony or her story often. So again, a lot of these things that kind of like seem very weird and odd for us, for her, you have to understand it was very normal. So she doesn't know how to like, it's like me, for example, right? If I go to the store and, some random dude touches me inappropriately, that's like very weird to me, right? Because that's not normal. That's not normal, But in the Middle East, that's a very common thing. Like her family members, they would get the woman would get touched when they would go out in the marketplaces in public. It was a very normal thing for women to get touched in public in Saudi Arabia. And so it was just normal to her. That's why she doesn't maybe necessarily bring it up a lot of the time. Sometimes she forgets, or sometimes it's just like such a normalized thing she doesn't think of bringing it up. So it's very crazy, like really, really, really thinking about it, guys. But I guess like as far as your experience with like Islam, growing up around Islam and all that stuff, what made you genuinely, like on a personal level, see Islam as being false or Christianity being true? What are your experiences with that? Or maybe theologically, is there anything about Islam that you think makes it false in comparison to Christianity growing up there?
Yeah, so that's like a very heavy loaded question. Well, like I said, I grew up Christian, so and then I was exposed to Islam too. So like growing up Christian, I didn't really question things because I was a kid, and I don't know, I just went along with things. Never really like understood the Bible. But I knew Jesus, I knew God and stuff, and I was heavily involved in church because my parents, or my dad is a pastor. And yeah, and when I came here, when I started questioning a lot of things, because along with freedom comes with, like you start, like your eyes are open and you start questioning things. You start to step into things and try to see how things are. And when I was growing up, actually, it occurred to like one of my friends, like older friends. They were like, didn't you know that Allah just means God? So we actually, we're actually like, we're Christian, but we would call God Allah in our language, or if we were we were speaking Arabic. So this whole like time, my preconceived notions is like, okay, like God is Allah. Like I thought they were like equal, or like similar, and it's just a different language. So I was like, okay, I know that like God equals Allah, and I know that Christianity is way different than Islam, because I grew up in an Islamic country and I see how they operated, and I knew that Christianity is not like that. So I had this in my mind, and I was like, okay, I was trying to walk through it, and I knew I was Christian and stuff, but I didn't really have the information to truly like know that, okay, Islam is like false, it's like disgusting, it's messed up and perverted the way Muhammad was. Because
you just say Muhammad was perverted?
Yeah.
How could you say that about him?
Because he married a 6-year-old, and he did a whole lot of other things that are just extremely perverse.
Wait a second. Are you saying that Muhammad, Papawa, the one that's most respected, almighty by all Muslims in Saudi Arabia, are you saying that he's a PDF file?
Yes.
That's crazy. And I have a question. So, like, growing up, so are you basically saying, though, like on a very serious note, though, that because of the inability or lack of freedom in the Middle East, that it led to a lot of ignorance?
Yeah, of course. Like, because you don't have freedom, there's also like a lot of gatekeeping of information. Like I said, like in school, all they would teach us is like, oh wow, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia was founded by these Muslims and their monarchs, and like, they tell us the whole glorified story about, how Mecca came to be, and they were so faithful in their faith, and they were such amazing like disciples and all of this stuff. And it was like a glorified version of like, and they don't tell us what it actually says in the hadiths and the Quran, and it's like, it's very cherry picked. So you have a good idealized version of Islam, and like, wow.
So they just give you the dawah script.
Yeah. So you it's kind of like making you respect them when it's undeserved, like, because they're hiding information from you.
Wow. That's really crazy, guys. So basically, I mean, as you guys can see, the Muslim in the comments below, guys. I mean, it's really crazy because she was once herself given the Dawa scripts. Growing up over there in the Middle East, she knew the Dawa script by heart. She knew what it was growing up alongside, Muslims and being a Christian in a country that doesn't want her, where her and her family were persecuted, where she was treated as less than for being a woman, where her mother was groped when she went in public, where she can't walk outside unless she's with another man, whether it's her father or her brother, some sort of other man. Those are the freedoms that we have in the United States of America, guys. You can be a woman and go walk outside by yourself. You can be a woman and enjoy the same liberties that we do have as a man. You don't have to worry about being groped when you go in public and the law being on the side of the Muslim man. You don't have to worry about being a second-class citizen because you're not of a specific race or skin color. There's just so many freedoms that we don't realize and don't think about it, but that we have over here, guys, and it's just so terrible. Like, living in the Middle East, it's just hard to imagine living that lifestyle, guys. I guess, what is the number one absolute top thing would you say is one thing hands down that's way better in America in comparison to Saudi Arabia?
I don't know. Oh my gosh. Definitely freedom, though. The fact that you can practice your belief as a Christian, you can go ahead and, you can be free, which is a Christian value, you can have freedom in Christ and, express and, like you're not suppressed how you are in the, Saudi Arabia. And it might be different nowadays because of the new leadership, but it's still, like when I was there, a woman couldn't drive, no movie theaters.
Oh yeah, explain. You see, those are little details that you don't think about, guys. Go ahead and explain the movie theater thing to them, because I didn't even know, guys, having a dog and going to the movies is accordingly haram in the Middle East, guys. You cannot have a dog and you can't watch movies according to Islam. Did you guys know that, guys? If you guys knew that, type 1 in the chat. If you didn't, type 2 in the chat. But let's go ahead and get into it. Go into that, because that's interesting.
Yeah, it's so funny because like movie theaters were not a thing growing up, and when I came here I was like, movie theaters are a thing. And also in the Philippines, where you get your little popcorn, your little drink, and then you go ahead and eat your movies or eat your popcorn at the movies. It's totally not a thing there. Like, I remember the closest thing we got to like watching movies is someone going door to door, like I think he was like Indian. He was selling like these bootleg DVDs, because you can't really, I'm pretty sure people can sell movies, but it has to be at a certain criteria. Like I remember when I traveled through Saudi Arabian Airlines, they censor the movie. They take out clips. So even when you're in an airplane traveling to a foreign country, you're still like in that, Islamic like bond or hold.
It's a spiritual bondage. That's what it is.
Yeah. And yeah, it's crazy because I never really thought about it, but yeah, we didn't grow up watching movies in the movie theater.
So what do you guys do for fun?
We can still watch movies, obviously, because of the internet.
But on the down low at your house.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. That's crazy, guys. And what's funny about it is because she told me about it, but she said, like, because here's the difference between Muslims and Christians. Christians are very sincere in their faith. So when they tell you they're trying to stop having an addiction to watching explicit videos at nighttime by themselves, I think we all know what I'm talking about. Christians, we genuinely try to stop doing that. We're not just doing that as a performative show to tell others. Sometimes we don't even tell others. That's kind of like the problem sometimes, because we need accountability. But anyway, us Christians, whenever we go through our spiritual walk with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, our God, we genuinely mean it from the bottom of our heart. It's not a legalistic or performative action. But like she mentioned, like for example, Muslims, it was against the law for you to go ahead and watch a movie in Saudi Arabia because according to Islamic Sharia law, a lot of Islamic countries don't allow you to watch movies, and it's not very common, right, to your average Joe over there. And so, what's funny is that they would act all legalistic in public, but at home they were all watching movies in private. So it makes no sense whatsoever, guys, whatsoever, literally. So it just kind of opens Muslims in a new light for me, guys, because whenever I see them talk about their faith in Allah and Islam and things like that, I no longer see them as people that are sincere in their faith, although I disagree with them. I kind of see them as a bunch of like people that are hypocrites and don't even practice what they preach. They don't really believe in what they say. They just do a bunch of performative actions for the public eye. But in private, they're not actually doing those things. That's the unfortunate reality about Islam, guys. And that's something that I don't know. That's just something that I've noticed. Oh, wait, could you explain your experience with Ramadan? Because I feel like that's something that's very interesting. And guys, also really quickly, I just want to mention, if you guys are just joining, don't forget to smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and share, guys. And if you can't financially support the channel, guys, please go ahead and donate through PayPal, guys. Become a member, guys, on our YouTube channel. You can also go ahead and, give in any way possible, guys. Any financial support helps me to continue doing this full time, guys, because YouTube AdSense, they like to demonetize a lot of my content and videos. So I appreciate all your support, all your prayers, all your love, guys. God bless you guys very much. But you want to go ahead and get into, how was Ramadan for you living there in the Middle East?
Yeah, Ramadan, it's crazy. There's some good stuff that happens during Ramadan, which is like at a certain time, like let's say when everyone's coming home from work and you're stuck in traffic, they actually come out to the streets and they give you like dates and water for free. So they because it's like you're about to break your fast, so you have to like eat something light or drink something. But in general, like Ramadan is so legalistic. Like the Muslims who practice it are so legalistic. Like I remember like I said, I had a best friend growing up who was Muslim, right? Yeah. And she would basically be so happy and excited to be on her period, because when women are on their period, they can't do Ramadan. So
oh my gosh.
Those
are things they don't talk about. Like, can you go into detail more, please?
Yeah, because they'll be like, oh, I can skip it because I'm on my period. So I'm not, I have to eat, I have to drink something, stuff like that. So, or like, you're basically unclean. And yeah, so they're like, she would get so happy. She'd be like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to, I can get some food in the cafeteria because, I'm not doing Ramadan right now. But yeah, they're just so legalistic about it. And I went to a Filipino school. I went to a Filipino school, and we had Arab teachers because they work in the Filipino school, but they wouldn't come in. They would call out sick, and they had to, even if it took like a month. They can do whatever they want basically because they're above us, because they're not, they're Arabs, they're not Filipinos. So they could literally, like, I remember the whole school year, my teacher would only show up like 3-4 times throughout the whole school year. So we didn't really learn anything in Arabic class, but that's another story. Yeah, in Ramadan, like they can just do whatever the heck they want. They can sleep all day and then eat at night when they're having their little feast. Their husband.
That's actually really crazy thinking about it. So you're telling me it's normal. Maybe they saved up all year round. I don't know their financial situation individually. But however, you did mention the fact that they would sleep throughout the day and then they would just randomly break their fast at nighttime. So it's not like they're even really fasting. They're just sleeping it off, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's such a funny story because my dad, he's a Christian, right? But he wanted to like practice. He wanted to see how it would be like doing a fast too. And during his fast, he actually lost weight. And my dad, he's like super skinny already, so he lost even more weight. But he noticed, he was like, wait a minute, my coworkers gained weight. Like, how did that happen? And then he basically found out they would be like, they would be, oh, I'm fasting. Oh, I'm such a good Muslim. Oh, I'm just going to take a nap, And then they're basically lazier at work. They either maybe they'll call off. And then the women, they don't do nothing all day. They sleep. And then basically their schedule becomes inverted. So it becomes, instead of this oh, I'm so humble, I'm gonna fast throughout the month, they're going to go ahead and have a feast in the middle of the night because, oh, the sun's down, so you can break your fast. So they're basically having an inverted schedule where they sleep throughout the day, and then at nighttime they don't just eat like regular like they would outside of Ramadan. They would actually overeat, and that's how they gain weight, because they binge eat, and it becomes this feast every night. They make so much food, and it's so funny because whenever we go to the grocery store, it's crowded as heck. And then all the women are just making the food at night, and then they eat all night throughout the night. So
wow, that's really crazy thinking about that. So you're telling me that people gain weight during Ramadan. That's wild. I need to go on a Ramadan myself, guys. If I went on a Ramadan right now, guys, and I tell you guys I'm going to fast during Ramadan, you guys see me coming fattier and fluffier than ever, I was capping, guys. I mean, come on, dude, bro. That's just so obvious, and that's actually really funny. And I remember you saying that earlier before the stream. You said something along those lines to your dad. He could smell their breath, so he could tell they weren't really fasting. Because he could smell the food, right?
Yeah. I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, you did. You were telling me about how his coworkers or something like that, you could smell the food or something like that.
No, I don't remember saying that. No, I know that they intentionally don't brush their teeth because they want to they want other people to know that they've been fasting and their breaths stink. And because when you're fasting, you don't they don't drink water even. So and then when I was in school, and I was in the school, I was I was just thirsty, and I'm not practicing Ramadan, but they said, oh, no, I had a water bottle, and they were like, no, you can't show that in public because you're gonna tempt people, you're gonna tempt those who are practicing Ramadan. And I was like, okay. And then I just went ahead and took a sip and then put it away. And that's just how legalistic they are. They're so legalistic. And then
they don't have a personal connection with God.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I wanted to add
go ahead.
Is that they're so performative. They would go out on the streets, they would just go ahead and park their car in the middle, like this, like a highway, and then they would park their car somewhere on the side, or especially when there's traffic and people stop, so it's going slowly, so that they can bask this glory that they feel whenever they're praying in the middle of the road. They lay their little carpet down, and then they go ahead and face the whatever direction Mecca is at, and then they go ahead and do their salah. And this is it happens throughout the day. So they would close stores down because they're doing al salah, so it would be I think 30 minutes to an hour. And it's so performative the way that they are. And then another funny thing that would happen during Ramadan is because people are hungry, so they're deprived, so they get road rage. I remember one time we were in the car because it was traffic, right? And so I think someone cut someone off because everyone's in a rush to get home because they're so hungry. And he got so mad, he came out of his car, and this happens every time Ramadan happens. He gets down from his car and he started swinging at this dude, and then he started I don't know if he hit the car, but he was just swinging at the dude.
So
and
a bunch
then
of anger, a bunch of demonic manifestation during Ramadan.
Yeah.
Wow.
And absolutely no self-control. they're doing the whole Ramadan fasting thing.
The Spirit of God has self-control.
Exactly. They're doing all this just to, like, check the box and just, like, oh, I did it, I'm such a holy Muslim. But in their heart, like, the root cause, they're not working, which is really, really crazy.
Wow, that's like, I mean, I know we usually think about the legalistic or performative action about it. Muslims performing Ramadan to appear holier than thou, but we don't think about the spiritual implications about it. Like, think about the demonic manifestation that occurred there. She was literally saying during Ramadan, people would literally get into fights more consistently every single year just because of the fact that they were hungry. And it's not like they're depending on the Holy Spirit, guys. These are worldly people doing some sort of long month fast. It's not even a genuine fast, but they're doing it with their flesh. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like fasting without Christ. It just doesn't make any sense, guys. And that's literally what was happening.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just, whoa, it's just like really crazy thinking about that. And I guess like coming over here, what's the difference in like what you learned? Like, how did you gain more knowledge here? Like, I mean, how is that? How is that?
Yeah, it's like, coming here, I was kind of illusioned because, like I told you earlier, how growing up I had this certain image of Islam. Like, yeah, it's different from Christianity, but it's like, like God is like,
Right.
The God of Christianity and Islam. So it was just something that I guess was in my head, because I know that I said that my dad is a pastor. So I never really discussed it with him, but it's like something that kind of like stayed in my mind.
So basically, the Christ long. So basically, when you were in the Middle East, you guys would, pretty much confuse Christianity with Islam from a young age, right?
Well, it's more like me personally, because I don't know, it just that's how it made sense in my head, even though it wasn't true.
Wow.
So so coming here, and especially the area I was in, it was more liberal, and a lot of people were more open to, like, liberals would choose to defend Muslims over Christians, which was doesn't even make sense.
Really?
Because
You were shocked by that?
yeah, because it's so like liberal here. And so I was like, okay, and it kind of
how did that surprise you, like the treatment towards Christians when you came over here to the States?
Yeah, I was just like, I was shocked. And
can you explain that to me? Because, like, in the Western world, there's so much Christ hate. And I know there's like an antichrist spirit around the world, but like, we really don't think about it like that, guys. Like, we're so accustomed to getting hate as Christians over here, but in a unique way. We're like, in the Middle East, you get murdered for being Christian. But here we get hated by leftist liberals for no reason, just because we're Christian. So could you explain like how did that shock you? How did that feel? Like, what did you think about it?
Yeah, because, I was in like the DC area, so it was a very general area, right, DC. Right. So, a lot of liberals there, and there's, and also the media, being exposed to the media, social media, you just like, you get this propaganda that Christianity is bad, and there's so many rules you have to follow, and they talk about like, oh, God is an angry God, and Jesus isn't real, and there's so much like false information bombarded online that it's like, okay, it kind of like shapes you as a child too. And another thing that happened when I moved here is that we didn't really have like a church necessarily, so it kind of like made me exposed to all of these I would say like false influences, and like that kind of like shaped my beliefs about my faith. So that kind of like led me to like being like agnostic for a certain period of time, which is like really thank God, like I've been delivered from that, from that kind of mindset. But it all comes from ignorance, and it all comes from like this liberal propaganda that says, oh, Christianity is a white man's religion, and if you're Christian, then you're racist, bigot, feminine, or sexist, which is like completely the opposite of what Jesus Christ teaches. Yeah.
Wow, that's really crazy. And for her, guys, she was really shocked because in her country, Christians are like the most persecuted ones in Saudi Arabia. Christians were the ones that were hated. They're the ones that were beheaded in the markets. They were the ones being persecuted if they're caught going to church or sharing the gospel. They were like the lowest of the low in her country growing up. But when she came here to America, she was surprised to see that everyone hated Christians for no apparent reason whatsoever. They received the most hate for no apparent reason whatsoever. And I think that just testifies to what the Word of God says, that it's so true. Because they hated me, they will hate you. Because we're the children of God, they will hate us just like they hated our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Whether they express that hatred through persecution, through murdering us, through cursing us, or through imprisoning us, falsely accusing us, all these manner of wickedness, like it speaks in the book of Matthew. That happens all around the world in different expressions because they have an antichrist hatred. They have an hatred towards Christians. They have a hatred towards our Lord and Savior, our God, Jesus Christ. And that's just a testimony of that, guys. It's just really crazy thinking about that, guys. Because Christians are hated all around the world. And somebody's actually mentioning in the comments, they think that you're lying, they're a Muslim. She's like, oh my gosh. And they're saying that, that Christians are PDF files and not Muslims. What is your response to that? Because, you lived in both sides of the world, so I'm not going to give my opinion. Let's hear it from her.
Okay, so, obviously, anyone can be a PDF file. Like, because as the Bible says, we're all fallen short of the glory of God, so everyone sins. So, yes, like, there can be a quote-unquote Christian PDF file, but it's not, like, Jesus wasn't a PDF file. But yeah, when we look over to the Quran, to Prophet Muhammad, people, he actively, like, he did these things. Like, he did things that are, like, disgusting and perverse. So we don't have, like, Jesus didn't do those things, and we follow Jesus Christ. We don't follow Prophet Muhammad. We don't follow even, like, the other I would say Bible characters like Moses, King Solomon, David. They sinned, they fell short of the glory of God, but Jesus Christ is who we follow because he is perfect. He is God. So yeah, there can be quote unquote people who are Christian that are PDF files, but they're not truly Christian because Christ hates that. That's sin that Christ tells us not to do. And
and I have a question. I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you think a Muslim can be a PDF file according to Islam?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So Prophet Muhammad, he was a pedophile, right? A PDF file. Sorry.
PDF file. I'm not used to the algorithm.
YouTube lingo. But yeah. So if he can do that, then you can argue that, if a Muslim becomes like Prophet Muhammad, then he is holy, and he is the best Muslim that they can ever be, right? So if you basically be like Muhammad, then you're a PDF file, you're possibly gay. You use women, you objectify women, you have sex with dead corpses, you marry your aunt, you know, all these like wicked and vile things. And you know, any Muslim nowadays can be better than their prophet. It's like kind of crazy.
Wow. And so basically what she's saying is, I mean, she grew up in, Saudi Arabia in the Western world, and she has seen how perverted it is over there with Muslim men and how they've hit on her from a young age at the age of 10 because she showed her ankles a little too much. They wanted to buy her socks. They liked the socks wet. What was it? The feet sweat. They liked the ankle showing. Man, you Muslims are weird. But anyway, much more than that, she's trying to be objective about it. She's trying not to use her personal experiences alone to, like, I guess, as evidence that Christianity is true and Islam is false. She's actually looking at the Quranic and biblical texts, right? And so whenever, for example, guys, whenever we look at the Quran, when we look at the Bible and what it's actually taught, the figure that we look up to as Christians is Jesus Christ. Muslims look up to Muhammad. And when you look at the difference between Christ and Muhammad, which is why they're always compared like 24/7, quite literally, Christ never taught to be a pedophile. He always taught to abstain from lustful desires. If you even so look at a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. Whereas in Islam, you're allowed to look at a woman with lust. You're allowed to have multiple wives. You're allowed to be gay. You're allowed to be a pedophile. As long as you pray 5 times a day, you give enough jizya, and you commit taqiyya enough for Allah, maybe He'll forgive you. That's what Islam teaches. And that's the difference between Christianity and Islam. And so again, if we want to look at what the truth is, we have to look at the main figures of both religions. Muhammad lived a lifestyle where he owned multiple sex slaves. And he was a pedophile that married a 6-year-old little girl at the age of 60. This is a 60-year-old man marrying a 6-year-old little girl.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Absolutely perverse and disgusting. Jesus Christ was God Almighty in the flesh, and he never married a woman, although he could. He could have married multiple women. He could have lived infinity and beyond, married all the women he ever wanted, and had no issues whatsoever because he's literally God in the flesh. But that's the difference between Islam and Christianity, guys. Very, very crazy. Alrighty, this person is asking for a verse to leave Islam, guys. But yeah, I mean, I guess just to wrap it up a bit, I mean, for the most part, when you look at Islam growing up, I mean, what are some things that you would find weird now, but like maybe when you were younger that you found it like normal, like just for those that are just coming in?
Yeah, like,
yeah, go ahead.
It's, for me, it's a lot of different things. Like, I can't even think of right now, but the first thing that came up to my head is the fact that the way that they treat girls or women, it's just very, very strange, like imagine you're a father, or you're a brother or something, and you have a little sister, and like imagine just like looking at them a certain way, the way that your prophet would look at a child, or like, a woman or a girl. It's very perverse, and I can't ever imagine being a Muslim girl in a Muslim family, because yeah, sure, like there are some instances I've seen online, like there's some instances like, fathers, like certain, Arab fathers or Muslim fathers, whatever, they're very nice and they're very kind to their little girl, their daughters, their wife. But it's like, if you go ahead and do the exact opposite of that, which is to harm them, which is treat them like a slave and marry a bunch of women, polygamy, and like have like child marriage, arranged marriages and stuff like that, it's completely permitted. It's very vile and disgusting. And I forgot to mention, when I was living over there too, there was this one instance where I actually came across like this scenario where I was in my apartment, or in my parents', where we were living at, and all of a sudden I came home from school, so I was just like in the living room, and all of a sudden there's this woman who just stumbles out of her apartment and then just starts screaming like, ah, and then she was saying something in Arabic. I think she was like pleading for help or something, and I think she was knocking on another door, and she was like, you know, she was clearly in distress, like something is happening and something's wrong in the home, and no one opened up the door to help her. Like I couldn't, because I was like a child, and I was by myself, so I didn't have my parents there, and no one opened up to help her. She was knocking at other people's doors to like aid her. Yeah, there was a lot of abuse, and I'm sorry to add more stuff, but
oh, it's okay. So I'm just saying that confirms my point about Surah 434. You saw a lot of abuse in the Middle East, so it was very common. They did practice actually striking their wife. I mean, would you say that?
Yes, absolutely. Like that's no doubt. And you know, you would see these women like covered up, like they're wearing their burqas, and you know, who knows like how they look down like behind that veil, you know, like, you know, they could have like bruised, bloody fingers and faces for all you know, but you can't tell, and it's like,
wow,
no one cares.
That's something you don't think about. The bigger the abaya, the bigger the abuse. Wow.
Sadly, I don't mean to laugh, but it's like very sad. Like that's really how it is, and that's reality. That's not just like.
So, is it safe to say the longer the skirt, the bigger the abuser is at home?
Yeah, and a lot of women don't even leave the home, which is really it's really crazy, and it doesn't have to be their wife. You know, like I mentioned earlier that the Filipinos, they would come and they would become domestic helpers. A lot of these domestic helpers, they don't ever get to leave the home. They're locked up. They're taking care of their family. They cook, they clean, they do everything. And on top of that, they get abused. Either they don't get fed, either they get sexually abused, they get beaten up, they get treated as another wife. They get all of this harmful things. And you know, it's crazy because my mom, she would actually do this mission work where she would go to the Filipino consulates, and she would visit all of these domestic helpers that have been brutally molested and abused by their I guess, how do you say amo, like their,
I don't know what that means.
Like amo, like someone who hired them, right? Their employer or something.
Uh-huh.
So
just to clarify, this employer would be like some kind of rich Saudi dude, if I'm not mistaken, right? Just so that they understand where you are, because you have to explain the specifics, because if not, they won't understand every single detail.
Yes. So this is an Arab who is most likely Muslim, probably 10 times out of 10 Muslim, and they're basically taking advantage of the fact that there are Filipino workers who come from the Philippines to work as domestic helpers or like nannies or babysitters or whatever, who live with them. So basically they get a chance to just do whatever the heck they want to this, these ladies. And
does this mean like rape and abuse? And they're like, what does that mean?
Yes, because they're under the man's household, right? So they can basically, in the Saudi government, from my understanding, is that they can basically do whatever the heck they want. So
how do the wives or the kids feel about this when they know about it?
To be honest, I don't know. And that's the sad thing about it, because a lot of them, there are many instances where they're never heard of again, by their family in the Philippines. A lot.
What?
Yeah. Like the women that my mom has met in the Filipino consulates, they would go there and they literally escaped like what's it called, by a thread, or what's it called, like when they barely escaped.
Right.
So they basically, like this one lady, I remember my mom told me that she jumped out of the window because he basically would lock everything. He would lock her in.
What? That's like a kidnapper psychopath 101.
Yeah, like no communication with Filipino, like her Filipino friends and family in the Philippines. Like he basically cut off all outside world connections, and she just had to escape. And I'm pretty sure like there are some scenarios where these workers would escape, and then they go to like police, like the Arab police, and they would just send them right back to the house. So because they're like, oh, that's your employer, so you're living with them. So it's very sad. And yeah, and these women are like very in desperate help. So
they knew that was going on.
Yeah. So it's very, very dangerous for these women to do this. But a lot of Filipinos get desperate, and they see that as an opportunity. And like I said, they're ignorant to the fact that these men, they can do it. And it's crazy because the government like backs them up. Like, this is just completely fine.
Wow. Okay. And so I guess that's just really crazy to think about. That's another thing that people don't really talk about. For all the Pinoys in the chat, you guys know all the Filipinos. But back a boy. But anyway, guys, so what she's basically saying is that like the law is on the man's side. So if he grapes another woman, if he does these things, his wife, his children have to basically shut up at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what they think. It matters all what the husband says, because he has the final authority in the household. So I'm just curious as to like, was it normal for you to like see like polygamous marriages or anything of that nature? Was it like polygamous marriages, like men married to multiple women? Was this something that was like low key or discreet, or like how? I mean, I guess how could you explain that? Like, have you seen any examples of that over there?
I guess I always knew it was a thing, right? But growing up, it's just like when you're a child, you just think innocently. You're like, oh, look, it's a family. You know, there's like there's a bunch of older women with one man and children. So it's like you.
What did you just say? Rephrase that again.
It's like, okay, I would be like 2 or 3 women walking alongside one man, and then those women have children. So, you know, like as a child, like you just see them and you're like, okay, they're a family, but they're wearing these burqas, so it's like their whole face is covered up. They're all veiled up. You don't see nothing. So it's like, okay, is that his older daughter, or are they married in a polygamous marriage, or, you know, that's his mother or mother-in-law, or, you know, you just don't know, because they're hidden. They're behind a mask, essentially. So you don't know who they are. Like, they actually are subhuman, which is like really sad.
Wow, that's really crazy. I mean, did you see, like, I guess, can you explain a day in the life of wearing like an abaya or burqa as a woman? Like, did you ever feel like inferior to men? And that way, did you ever, like, I mean, what would you do out in the sun or the cold, or like, I mean, just explain like the difficulties, I guess, of like going through that.
Oh gosh, now that I think about it, it's you should never find yourself in a situation where you're just like surrounded by men, or you're in public where you're by yourself. You should never ever find yourself in that predicament, because that just means that you're just setting yourself up for, like, you know, perverts to come around, and, you know, like, it's just danger. It's like danger everywhere. So whenever you go out, you know, a lot of people, they're in their car, right? Whatever you need to do, like go to the store, or you need to run errands with your parents, because I was a kid, so I didn't really have like a routine necessarily, except like when I go to school and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like you should never find yourself in a predicament where you're shopping by yourself in the grocery store, or you're like, even in broad daylight, because you just never know what could possibly happen. Like I said earlier, like my mom got groped and touched in Balad, and it's very unfortunate because you just gotta keep going with your day. You just gotta have to keep pushing it. So it's really crazy.
Wow. And so, did it feel uncomfortable wearing it 24/7 or not?
No, because we're not Muslim, so when you get to the house, you can take it off. Like whether you're with your brother or father or even like family friends.
But like throughout the day when you were at school or work, did you like feel uncomfortable wearing it? Did it bother you? Did it feel cool? Like, I mean, explain it. Like, how did it feel? Or...
Oh yeah. So basically, whenever it's very hot, like extremely hot, it's like the desert in Saudi Arabia, right? So the fact that you're wearing like an abaya, it's black most of the time. Like sometimes there's like white ones, but you don't really want to get the white ones or like the light colored ones, only because you don't want the attention. Like it's too like eye catching. So you stick to the black ones. And it gets really hot. Like I remember, like I think one time I like fainted. Like I collapsed because it was so hot. But you just have to be very careful when you're in.
Wow, that's crazy. What?
Like when you're in like the school, because I went to an all girls school. You can take it off, but then our uniform was like long sleeve too, so it was pretty hot. But for most of the places, like when you go to the mall, when you go to like government places, the hospital, they turn up the AC because even the Muslims, whenever they're wearing their like, not just the Muslims, the Arabs, when they're wearing their like attire, the white dress and the little turban, the red and white with the red and white squares and the black ring on top. They're like clothed up, like they're like they get hot and sweaty. So the good thing is that like there's ACs blasting in every building, but the thing is it's just like it's very hot, like because it's a desert. So.
Oh, that's really crazy, guys. I just want to mention one more time, guys, if you guys are in this live stream, don't forget to financially support us by donating. If you guys really do appreciate her time answering your questions, if you guys have any more, you guys can continue asking them. If you guys appreciate her time and effort, like just telling her life experiences and me filming this, guys, I would really appreciate your financial support. Any donations on PayPal, any memberships, I appreciate it, whether it's $1 or $500, guys. Any little bit helps. It helps with gas. It helps with doing videos. It helps with traveling expenses, food, and all those different things. So thank you guys so much for all your financial support. I appreciate any super chats and anything of that nature. God bless you guys very much. Appreciate it very much. Now, getting back to your story, guys, right? Because this is very, very interesting. So now you're over here in the West, and you have a lot of opportunities. You can go to Bethel, you can go to Hillsong, you can go to a Roman Catholic church, you can go to a new Seventh-day Adventist, you can go to a Baptist church, a Calvinist church. I mean, there's just so much variety. Now, obviously, some sects are very heretical. Others just maybe not the most biblically accurate, right? So, coming over here from a place where it was very difficult to find a church, how is the difference in your experience where, like, finding a church, going to church? Like, did people care about these little doctrines? Like, for example, whether you believe in pre or post tribulation, whether you're whether you're Baptist, whether you're Calvinist, whether you believe in, you know what I mean? Like, did people care about these little minor details? And I just want to thank you so much. Life of Zimboinga, welcome. Thank you very much for becoming a member, guys. Anybody, if you guys want to, you guys can go ahead and become a... Yes, they are from the Philippines. She is Pinoy Shah, guys. But But for those of you guys also as well, you guys can become a member, guys, as well. Like, it's called the Why Not. It's only 99 cents a month, guys. So if you guys want to go ahead and support me, guys, think about it like this. If 1,000 of you guys give $1 a month, that's 1,000. That's 1,000 different people. However, if only one person gives $1 a month, right? I mean, look at the difference between $1 versus 1,000. So if we all pitch in, guys, we can make a big difference, and I can continue sharing this. Because YouTube, guys, I already know they're probably going to demonetize this video. That's just how it is. But go ahead and get into that. I just want to hear more about like your experiences.
Okay, so I guess growing up, I didn't really know what exact denomination I was doing. We were. I didn't even know about such thing as denomination. I just knew, like, obviously we're not Catholic, and obviously we're not Muslim. So the whole thing about denomination just like came up to me when I actually moved here. I think it was like the SATs or something, or the PSATs, and then they're like, yeah, they were doing like a survey.
SAT? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in school. So I was like, wait, what's a denomination?
So you didn't find out about different denominations until high school?
Yeah, basically.
Wow, that's crazy, guys.
So growing up, it was just more like you just follow the Bible and then you go to church, and then but now that I'm looking back at it, we pretty much leaned more on like Pentecostal, like we were like Assembly of God. Now that I think about it, and there was a lot of, like I said, a lot of music, and then I think one time we did like deliverance and all that stuff. So it was pretty wild to be doing those things hidden, away from like the public eye. Like, you can't be too loud. It can't be too loud, because if it is, then because we were also right next to like a Somali consulate, so there would be times where I've never been inside the Somali consulate because I'm not Somalian, but there would be like really long lines outside of the Somali consulate. And then it would kind of like be close to the church area. So they would get nervous about that a little bit. They would be like, okay, let's be a little bit, chill out today, because there's like Somalians right outside. And yeah, so that was my experience. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, absolutely. I think it's very interesting. I think everyone's just interested in hearing about your story, because it kind of is like evidence for what I talk about. I talk about more of like the legalistic, the theological, the religious, you know what I mean? Like the more like factual aspect of it. And she kind of gave her own anecdotal like experience with Islam. Not to say that it's not true, because it's obviously very true. However, you gave your own personal life experience and what you went through growing up in an Islamic nation, being a young female, I guess from before the age of 10 years old and after the age of 10, and how that plays a big difference. And the reason why I use specifically the number 10 is because according to, Islam in the Middle East, after the age of 10, she's already a grown woman. So she's allowed to be married off to other men. She's allowed to, she's forced to wear an abaya, because if she doesn't, she's causing other men to lust. It's very crazy what's going on over there in the Middle East. And so we're combining her personal experience with what I'm saying about Islam. And she's literally confirming everything that I tell you guys. Everything I talk about is confirmed by her own individual story. And no, she wasn't the most educated person on Christianity or Islam. So she's totally unbiased to this, guys. She's not the most informed individual. However, with what she experienced, she can't say that the things that went on with Christianity and Islam that I mentioned are very true. So I'm not just pulling this out of the woodworks. She's actually confirming it with her lifestyle. Men groped her mother when she would go out shopping for groceries in public. When she was outside, she was catcalled with her mother. And Muslim men, they didn't do anything about it because it is not frowned upon in their culture. She had people coming from the Philippines, coming to be servants of the Saudi people, and they were looked down upon as second-class citizens and do the jobs that they didn't want to do. But much more than that, they would use them to grape them, to abuse them, and all these different things because they were in desperation for work. Because in the Philippines, there's not that much financial opportunities for them out there. So it's really, really, really crazy, guys, when you look at it from that perspective. How they treat women is absolutely disgusting. They treat women like these fourth-class citizens. And the same thing with Christians. She had to go to underground churches, and not quite physically, but more of like it wasn't literally underground, but it was more hidden and isolated. And they had to make sure to very much soundproof their church because it was against the law to go ahead and go to church. And I believe it still is today, to this day. However, they were able to secretly get in private and actually go and do church in Saudi Arabia. But they were in fear of their lives every single day because they could be caught and they would all be beheaded. That is what they went through as born-again Christians in Saudi Arabia. And I actually want to mention my experience too, because I was actually in Saudi Arabia for a bit too, myself. So it's very funny, guys. I know you guys probably don't know this because I probably don't talk about this much. But basically, I did go to Saudi Arabia before. I was in the airport because it was like a connecting flight in Riyadh. And guys, let me tell you, everything she's saying is very much true. Like when I was in Riyadh, guys, the men and women wouldn't hold each other's hands. It was like very, very, very odd and weird. They literally wouldn't hold each other's hands like couples because that's considered haram. And not only that, guys, but like the Muslim dudes were such creeps there that they would just stare at the woman all awkward. That, you know, when I say the woman, I'm talking about women that came from other countries. So you would see a woman coming from like London and she would be wearing like these jeans, or you would see some dude coming from Florida and he's wearing like a tank top. You know what I mean? So just like clothes that are considered, I guess, more westernized. They would wear these normal looking clothes to us, what we believe is normal. They would be wearing these clothes in Saudi Arabia, and they would be getting all these crazy looks. People would give them nasty, dirty attitudes. And I was just like, what the heck, right? It was so weird. And it was a totally different atmosphere. You feel the death of Islam. You feel the legalism of Islam. You feel the bondage of Islam. As soon as I flew into Saudi Arabia, I felt the bondage, guys. Absolutely disgusting, absolutely satanic, guys. It's just, all they want to do is go ahead and appear holy to the external appearance, but internally, guys, they are dead. They are dead without Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Also, guys, I want to go ahead and mention again, thank you guys so much for watching the stream. And if you can, again, please go ahead and donate to us financially on our PayPal. It will be in the link below. You guys can also go ahead and buy our Make America Born Again merch, MABA merch. And we also have hoodies. We have shirts, all that Gucci stuff, guys. So you guys can go ahead and purchase it, guys. Really affordable prices. Great way to represent the kingdom of Christ. Because I truly believe before we can make America great again, we must first make America born again. But what are your personal experiences? Because, I mean, you grew up over there in the Middle East. What do you think about Muhammad? Like a genuine perspective. What do you think about him?
I mean, honestly, growing up there, I didn't really have a certain view, like I said, because they would just make it like this, wow, it's such a beautiful religion. Like, oh, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Like, they would just, like, really have this high regard and respect that whenever they would talk about it, like when we had our history lesson about like Saudi Arabia, they would really like elevate him like how Jesus is elevated in Christianity. And it was just like, okay, I didn't really have any opinions about him because I didn't know all of these horrific things that he actually did, you know, as a...
Oh, they don't talk to you about those things.
No, they don't talk to you about those things. Wow. Because they probably don't see it necessary to benefit their religion or like how other people perceive them.
So basically what she's saying is that she was kept asleep when she grew up in Saudi Arabia, and she didn't know half the stuff that went on with Muhammad and Islam. She wasn't aware that he was a pedophile, that he was racist, and all this nonsense, because they don't educate the people on that stuff. They keep you ignorant, they keep you dumb, they keep you asleep, because they know the second you're awake, guys, they no longer have the Islamic Empire. That's the reality of the matter, guys. And so whenever you look at the reality, guys, Jesus Christ is God. He died on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins, guys, and 3 days after resurrected. He is God Almighty. He says that I am, the Alpha and the Omega. Only God can call himself that. He also fulfills the prophecy in Isaiah. A child will be born unto a virgin, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. That's literally who Jesus Christ is. Even when you look at the false testimonies of the Quran even says that Jesus Christ himself had no physical father, therefore making him God, because his only father is the eternal Father, God alone. Because Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. Jesus Christ is God Almighty in the flesh. So even when you look at the false Quran, you can even see that Jesus is God, guys, and the evidence is there. And the characteristics of Muhammad being a pedophile, racist, and all this stuff, and treating women as second-class citizens, this isn't just one individual. This is who they follow in the Middle East, and you can see this by their fruit and by their action, guys. So it's made very abundantly clear, guys. This isn't just my opinion. This isn't just my perspective. She gave her testimony. She gave her story. And that's what it really happens in the Middle East, guys. It's very, very, very sad. Is there anything that you would like to welcome, Allah's little helper? It's nice seeing you, bro. It's nice seeing you, because you literally joined after the whole party. We're right now in the after party. If anybody has any questions for her, please, by all means, go ahead and ask her any questions. But do you have any, statements that you want to go ahead and say? Any closing statements? Oh, you were? Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I would say, Jesus Christ is king, and yeah, it's a lot of people are in the dark about the truth about Islam, and I lived there, and it's so crazy that this information is not revealed to me, because they don't want people to know and have this view on Islam, because what they want to do is to really, because I see a lot of Filipinos who would go there, they would marry Muslims, and they would be entrapped in this religion, because they would have this false idea that, oh, this is such a beautiful religion, oh, the Quran, it's so holy, and then they just find out after being married and living as a Muslim, they are pathetic, and it's very miserable. So a lot of information is hidden because Muslims don't want people to know about the truth. And some Muslims are even ignorant to it, which is really sad. So really read up and do your research, and ask wisdom from God to reveal to you, the truth, if you're Muslim and you're listening. So, yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely, guys. If you guys would like to hear more from her personally, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. You guys can go ahead and email me, message me, guys. Because she definitely has a lot more to speak about and a lot more to say. This was kind of really last minute and just really on the spot and quick. Mostly, yeah, guys. So she has more time in the future to collect her thoughts, talk about other experiences that she's gone through. And yeah, guys, I mean, it's just really crazy thinking about what's going on right now with Islam and what has been going on, because it's a fulfillment of the book of Revelation, the prophecy that lets us know that Islam, wherever it goes, it brings death and hell with it. It's a fulfillment of that. The four horsemen, the colors, the white, right, the pale green, the red, all these different colors of the four horsemen. We see it all throughout the different Islamic flags. And also when we look at Galatians chapter 1, verse 8, guys, it makes it very clear, be aware, if any angel that comes to you with a different gospel than this, let them be accursed. And then what happened 900 years after? Muhammad received the revelation from an angel with a false gospel. So it's just everything points back to Christ at the end of the day. Even false religions, they show you that Jesus Christ is God. even though that's not in their doctrine necessarily per se. And I'm not saying there's multiple ways to heaven. There's only one way, and that's through Jesus Christ. But what I am saying is that other religions, without even realizing it, they point to the fact that Christianity is true, that Jesus Christ is God Almighty. So I find that very, very interesting, guys. But yeah, guys, I also did want to make just a little spoiler. I will be coming out with a book in a few months. So I just wanted to give a little spoil. I will be coming out with a book exposing the reality of Islam. For those of you guys that are interested in that, I will be sharing the connection between Christianity and Islam and all these other false religions, and how all these false religions prove that Christianity is true. So if you guys are interested in that, I don't know if you guys would be, but if you guys are, I will be coming out with that in the next few months, and I'm very, very excited. It's taken me a long time to write this book, but I'm very, very excited to write this so that you guys can help, so you guys can use it in theological debates and argumentations and things of that nature, discussions with non-believers to bring them to Jesus Christ. Because, I mean, even Muslims, even if you don't agree with Christianity, I think it's a very interesting read for you to go ahead and learn about the connection between Islam and Christianity. And it really will point you towards Jesus Christ, because you'll see how false Islam is and how it all points to Christ at the end of the day, guys. So very, very excited about that, guys. And I just want to make one last mention, guys, before we go ahead and end, guys. We did our 2 hours today. Very, very excited. We got to 2 hours because I plan on being more consistent with the live streams. If you guys could, please go ahead and smash that like button, share it with someone, please. And please financially support me, guys, because I need daily financial support for you guys to keep on going, guys, because this is not cheap. I just bought new equipment that I literally need. For example, I have to, like, little things like this microphone so that I can talk to you guys better, more clarity, right? Things like that, to have a laptop. I'm saving up to upgrade my PC, things like that, so that I can edit faster, so I can have higher quality videos and edits for you guys. All those things cost money. So if you guys want to go ahead and support the mission, guys, please, by all means, go ahead and show your love and your support by donating to me, guys, whether that be on PayPal or that be becoming a member on my channel monthly. However you want to go ahead and financially support, I appreciate that. And if you can't afford to do so, please go ahead and keep me in your prayers, guys, that God provides for us and that he gives me guidance and all those good things. And I appreciate your love so much, guys. I really hope any Muslims watching this, that this video was very edifying for you, that you were able to learn something from this, and that you come closer to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, guys, at the end of the day. Because Islam is false, Jesus Christ is king. And Jesus is the only way unto the kingdom of heaven. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I really appreciate you guys so much. It was your boy Nate. Subscribe, like, comment, and share.